chorus, breakdown, breakdown hook,
Good morning there, Mr. Hanks.
Hey, good morning. Nice to hear you. Why didn't you request a mic? Just kidding. It's good to talk to you finally.
That was pretty funny listening to you the whole time, being like, nobody wants to talk.
Gosh.
Yeah, I had the mic request in almost immediately.
Boy, I was looking forward to it too, but oh well. We did something anyhow. But yeah, so you caught the long and short of it. We can I'll let you take it however you'd like it. But yeah, so
Well,
you probably had your fill of listening to me, so
I want to preface it with, I was totally asleep in yesterday's space before you even got into it. So I heard you say something about like, oh yeah, Eric heard me talking about it, and I was like, in La La Land, maybe by osmosis.
oh wow, yeah, maybe I saw you in there, and
I was
so maybe you
totally,
just stumbled
yep,
in or
yeah.
phased out. Yeah.
Just letting you know, I did not actually hear what was being discussed, but I am super interested just off of what I was hearing today. I mean, obviously, I've been doing my best to follow along with everything that you're putting out there, but admittedly, it's new stuff, it's new understandings, it's new perspectives, it's you're on point for cutting edge conversations. But obviously, I'm super interested. I think there's massive value to what's going on. Like, I totally believe that you're going in the right direction. I love that you're throwing in words that I'm familiar with as concerning new topics like superfluids, magnetohydrodynamics, neutrinos. So it's. I feel like we the people are all moving in a different direction of conversation, and there's a new vernacular that we have to learn how to wield correctly, because there's new meanings, new definitions, new understandings, new perspectives. So I'm trying to catch up to where you have sprinted to.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's I hear you, and I mean anybody and people can too, and like yeah, it's possible, and it's nothing. There's nothing special, It's just a kind of like a the understanding I think is really key, and if we'll maybe get into things and just maybe a little bit more specifically, but there's just like a couple of keys really, and
Okay.
then it unlocks things, and you start to see it. And
Makes
like I
sense.
was in another space, like I was talking about the fractal toroidal geometry, because once you see the yin yang structures, everything starts to click. And principles kind of like fall out of it, and the principles of smoke rings and tornadoes and natural stuff, bubbles, are crucial for this understanding, and crystals, etc. So it's I'm saying all that for people to like not be intimidated by trying to engage with it, because it's actually got a natural understanding. It's kind of intuitive. People probably thought this way about things before they were told it wasn't true. You know what I mean? It's in a lot of
Totally got
regard.
you. Yes. Yes. I'm right there with you. I think a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff that, has been put in the books was more like boundaries to understanding than actually promoting a true understanding of what's going on around us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Limit stops.
Yeah. So we post in the space there. So Yeah, we can. I mean, so if you didn't like, just to maybe like catch you up, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if you're interested, like I mean, just in particular here, I'm trying to be short-winded about it since I just talked a bunch, but
Understood.
basically, science. You heard that bit that I played with Science Bob, and I was
Mm-hmm.
just blown away whenever he said that is the exact thing he
Mm-hmm.
was talking about.
Yep.
Quite independently. So it told me that, okay, okay, it's not nothing. You know what I mean? And that was just last night, man. Like I was shocked, and that's why I had to get the paper off. And I had just kind of fixed like a final pass,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, okay. He shared me his paper, and I
Mm-hmm.
read it, and humbly, I think I've got a better fit.
Nice.
Um,
So we're
yeah.
gonna see a name change on the PFP soon to Science Nathan. Come on, just do it. Come on, guy. Just it's that's
That's right.
it's very
Yeah.
apropos for what's going on. Science Nathan Hanks.
What's funny what he said also was that like it seemed like he might have been reaching out for like we should work together in that clip on this or something, which
Understood.
was also I was taken aback as a surprise.
Uh huh.
And I'm not sure that and maybe there's just a bunch of people converging, and he needs to say it in his language, and I'll say it in mine, and then
Mm-hmm.
let like the history decide. I don't know, but
Totally
I think
understood.
that there's no, but he's going to have to account for, as I'm pretty sure I can account for, which is like all the particles derived from this geometry. That's the
Totally.
big thing,
Yeah.
is that everything is made up out of this geometry, and nothing has ever said that before. And the things that say the way things are just, we just say that because it has to be that way for measurement. We don't know why. And so
Yeah.
this is why Bob was saying it's so revolutionary, and it would be like, oh, whatever. Though interestingly, he's been working on this for two, like our timeline for talking about this is like identical.
Yeah.
And also the publication of that Nielsen theory that I was quoting and citing and mentioning in that conversation, and is relevant. And I'm hoping to get that interview soon with her. And but she was also published it in like August, so this was right around the time of like digging into some of these deeper things, and it's
You've
just
been digging
very
into this
very.
for longer than 2 months, and
Oh yeah, yeah, but it was specifically the fine structure which he was talking about. That kind of like emerged as like it kind of turned up as a side quest. You know what
mhm.
I'm saying? And,
I
and then it was like turned into, oh well, not okay. Well, we solved the fine structure actually, and then it was like, oh god, now that we've done that, the bigger fish is a unified theory, and I had no intention of trying to tackle that. I just thought that if we looked at vortexes, they're all over the place. So I just wanted to say that to people, like as a heuristic. Like if you're thinking about physics, think about vortexes, and maybe okie dokie, like this is like a paperback book or something.
mhm.
But now it's like, good God, this is just the new physics.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I
It's
would
wild.
recommend, because you did say on your space, hey, if anybody wants to DM me and give me warning, I don't need to do it privately. It's a perfectly reasonable public statement to be made. Because of my experiences, Nathan, I have information that people requested to be shared with them, and it didn't necessarily pan out the best way for that information, which should be shared far and wide. So I would just caution you
Yeah,
as you're moving
totally.
forwards and people attempt to befriend you and say things like, tell us everything you know, right? You may just want to be a bit cautious in who you tell everything to. And not because it's a threat at all, but just because these people may not do right by your information.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. It's something on my mind. I kind of have an ethos though that like I'm being drugged by the principles of, which is as soon as I know something, I'm radically telling everybody. So no privilege in getting to me
Totally
because
understood. Yes,
everybody is
that's
available. That's a
absolutely.
strategy. I don't know if it's like I think it's what's going to keep me alive. I learned it from Stephen Greer, I
I
think.
think that's a very
And,
smart way to function is just give your information to everyone and don't try to be exclusive with anyone because those are the people
yeah,
that are potentially a problem for your info. And I'm only saying it because I've learned from direct firsthand experience.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I believe it. things are getting a little bit more real, man. Like
Hmm.
I was kind of joking about being looking on this from the outside and kind of like trying to piece things together, but now it's like it's just getting a little bit more real,
Yeah.
in a way. You know?
It's like getting to the deep end of the wave pool. You start and
Totally.
you're like, oh, the wave pool just started. Let me get it, and then you get to like the deep end, and you're like, whoa, whoa.
Whoa, indeed.
I was
Whoa,
just
indeed.
as we're sitting here chatting, I pulled up your page on X, and I'm looking at your post from May 29, 2024. Your pinned post about the yin yang is not duality, but rather a trinary. I've never seen that before, and I think it's
Oh yeah, no,
fantastic.
it's great.
That is
It's
good
no,
stuff.
it's a guiding principle, man. And follow that thread and look at it. It comes from Marco Rodin, who has a vortex-based mathematic. About four images down, there's something called the ABHA. I say
Oh boy.
ABA. Maybe
Okay.
there's a. It's called a cipher. What it is it's a beautiful diagram that like I'm I can't use it in the paper, but it would fit in the paper. But they won't listen to that language. They won't listen to this beauty to derive. I could have used this to do
Uh
what I
huh.
had to do mathematically with all this other stuff. But Marco Rodin,
Uh huh.
and that cipher gives you all the, it's better mathematics than we're taught in school.
Uh huh.
It's naturally encoding of the torus. It has like spiritual dimension tied into it. It explains everything. You can easily like draw this yourself and do all the calculations you need for everything
Uh huh.
off of it. It's beautiful. And yeah, no, it's a new way of thinking about it because out of the three interaction, this ratio, there's a whole out of it. So there's this kind of unity that emerges from these relationships, and it's not just opposites. There's a harmony between those two things, which is a third thing, which is that trinary.
Yeah, the other I've actually seen that Taurus before, and now I'm also looking at these other images that you have, which in one of the iterations, it's a green shaded triangle over what looks like a red shaded W with some different star images on it, and there's another iteration of that further up in the thread where it doesn't have all the coloring and stuff like that, where you have the circle with all the numbers going around it from the
Yeah,
1 to the 9 position, and then obviously like 369, and like this is stuff
yeah.
that, like, I'll be honest, like I've been looking into this stuff for years because I can a lot of what I've done, Nathan, is just study the history of things that people have been thinking about for a long time, and you can see the thought process through all of history. So these are certain
Totally.
things that I've come across and realized like other people have been paying attention to it for a long time. Not that I've come to any conclusions, but just understandings of, at the very least, the value to the topic. And
Yeah, and yeah,
it's so awesome for me to speak with you and, see that this conversation is now moving forwards contemporarily, to some sort of a conclusion that hopefully I will also be able to
yeah,
understand and have a practical, real world benefit from the conclusion being made. Potentially no longer occulted. It's in my mind's eye, there's a high probability that there's an aspect of society that is aware to the stuff that you're figuring out, probably doesn't want you to figure it out, but we, the people, will benefit from this information being more public at some point.
yeah. No, totally. I would refer the YouTube clip. One of my favorite things that Ken Shoulders, the plasmoid guy, said was, "I have to further this so that I can benefit my fellow man. That's the
Right.
only reason I have. Otherwise, it's all for nothing. I have to further my fellow man."
Yeah. That to me is very much what Nikola Tesla was attempting to
Hmm.
do. And
Yeah.
there were forces that were working with him and forces that were working against him. And I just sadly feel that, unfortunately, the forces that were working against him to, hide the vast majority of important information that he figured out, we have a very limited set of tools that came out of the Tesla toolkit.
Yeah, and Guy Obolinski said it as well. This was a Tesla principle that technology should heal.
Uh-huh.
I love that.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that said that way before, but I think that's right on, and it gets around like the weaponization of technology, pretty neatly, just as like a good principle.
So is there a way, if I were to ask, like, well, let's just start with a
Yeah.
better understanding for myself of you, like, diving into these efforts. When can you say you started digging into this stuff and trying to figure things out for yourself?
It was about 2 years ago. I was kind of looking at or 3 years ago, maybe starting to think that, oh, this thing in the sky was a crack, right? Having something, what is that in the sky, right? Is it alien? And so I was on that path for a long while. And then I thought, well, if it's real, then it's going to be real for a long time. It didn't just pop up. And so you can look historically. And so I was kind of down that path and had not real much interest in the science because I thought that frankly, I was naive. I thought they would tell us when they figured something out, right? And then, and then once I realized that the solutions were hidden behind cracked science, then it was like, oh, starting to learn about this, and then MH370 and the teleportation of that, and like what that implies, and that to me was like seeing leaked footage of an atomic test before you know what an atomic bomb is. You're like, oh my good God, we did some anyway.
Uh-huh.
And these are little cracks that open up into something more that's going on. And then you
Piqued
look,
your
well, does
curiosity, to
anybody
say
know
the very
anything?
least.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
like, what's going on?
Uh-huh.
What's going on? And if somebody knows something, if there's any scientist that's reverse engineered, what does that person know?
Uh-huh.
Because they have to know something. It's not magic, or
Mm-hmm.
it is, and then we'll figure that out as we try and know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more and more, it turned out that there was a coherent story about things that were, and once you have the veil lifted that you're not going to be told things, then you don't get stumbled into, oh, well, they would have made a technology out of that. We would see it on our shelves. Oh, they would have uh, told us about that in school. I would know about it. All these things dissolve once you have the conspiracy structure set up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to be like, well, no, they wouldn't. And then you keep going and trying to justify the chain. And that's where we end up coming to. You find a lineage of common thinking going back forever that's all connected to the people that you know about. Einstein, Tesla, Helmholtz, de Broglie, Dirac, all these guys had a hand in it. Leonardo da Vinci knew about vortexes. Lord Kelvin, everybody touched on this stuff. So it's like amazingly coherent, as you would expect for something beautiful and true to be.
Yeah, the first person that I recall doing some reading on about vortexes and implosion power would have been Victor Schauberger.
Yep, yep,
And,
yep, yep.
and I found him very interesting. And I loved that he had the nickname the Water Wizard. Worked out well for my plumbing brain and the stuff that he was doing. But with that being said, so now you've been, delving into this stuff for a few years, which, I don't, I don't doubt that you've done a copious amount of reading and calculating and figuring. But I guess I just kind of want to jump to the practical, right? So now in your
Yeah.
experience and your research and stuff, like, like, I don't know how to put it better, but like, what do you think you've accomplished, like in layman's terms, for folks that are like, trying to understand the value of what you're doing, which I'm
Yeah.
not trying to come from an attacking way. I'm just trying to come
No,
from
no, not at all. I don't take it that way.
an
Yeah,
understanding way. Like, where do you
totally.
think you're bringing us to?
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple of things. What It depends on who's asking, right?
Hmm.
Somebody who's like a hard-nosed engineer would want to ask rightly, so what? How can I use this? What does it predict? What can I do with
Hmm.
it? Right? And to those, there are different kinds of answers. Namely, I believe this will give a framework in theory to better do the magic technology of coherent energy transformations. It'll give a form and mathematical structure to the ratios that are required for stability, for the ordering number, for the mechanism. It can put on the board and make it a point of fact. And this is where it gets really dangerous. And, lots of people have died who've done this. But you put it in the ground and you make it real. And so you can frame no debate that this plasma science is legitimate. Like just mathematically, you'd have to not look to not see it because it's just a fact.
Gotcha.
That would be one of the application things. Now, for the layman's person, maybe you don't care about physics at all, right? Like you're not interested in a unifying theory. And to that, I would say, well, okay, if that's your position, then, and I'll come back to the person who's moderately interested, but let me go to the person who doesn't care about anything or anything. Like, what's the use of this? Well, it's a better way to understand your universe because you can see things and how they're interacting. You can see the shape of the body, the shape of clouds and rivers and land and the stars, and it'll give you a common language that you understand in bubbles and smoke rings and waves and sounds and colors for understanding things
Mm-hmm.
naturally. And it is the way that it is. It's not a metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to that we can give grounding in a new way that particles and wavelets, all that stuff is obscuring nonsense. There's, in my view, there's no particles at all. That
Right.
is a misunderstanding of a hard bit of something. Where what we have is rotating energy
Okay.
in little clusters. And so that rotation is not a hard point of a bit. In fact, in the middle of it, there's not anything at all. It's not hard at all, but it is just like a smoke ring, stable. You can poke a smoke ring and it won't break apart. It'll conserve its energy and the helicity and the twirl, and it'll wobble away from you, right? You can smack two smoke rings together and they're going to serve. How in the hell do they do that? Through their topological winding around and connecting, that making a loop is the topological. Topological means geometric, it means shapes, it means forms. So whenever we're saying topological field theory and all that stuff, what we're saying is that it turns out everything is kind of like shapes,
Mm-hmm.
and there's shapes to everything. In fact, the vacuum and everything around us is going to be defined, our genes, everything, in this new understanding, which goes to the moderate person, which is this is a revolutionary physics paradigm that replaces quantum mechanics and the standard model because it does better. It does what they can't do, which is tell you what's going on and why it's going on. They have to say it's just this way. We say why it's that way. It's a revolution.
And when you were talking about the plasma part on the front end, am I to understand that that would be a level of, you know, for
Yep.
lack of a better term, like free
Topological
energy,
charge
like
confinement.
that we would be
Yeah,
able
that's
to
the
have
application of it.
new sources of power that would provide um, greater output than input, so to say.
Yeah, well, the thing is a lot of people say, well, you can't do that with second law thermodynamics, right? And I'm like, well, the flow system, if you
Fuck
put
the second
if
law of
you,
thermodynamics.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm way past
Yeah,
that being
yeah,
a
yeah,
boundary in reality. I've
yeah,
read that right out of Tesla's own books. He has an appendix in one of his books where he decimates the concept of the second law of thermodynamics being an actual like limit, so to say.
yeah. And so in this view, just shortly, and then I'm glad to have Daz up here. Welcome, buddy. Just quickly here. So the revolution that this would give with this free energy, but more, we can also make things like gold fresh. We can make fresh gold, baby. We can make seeds strong without pesticides and fertilizers and all this stuff by putting a plasma arc over them. We can
Huh.
heal injury. There's like a dozen different things that can be done with this technology. So that's why it's revolutionary.
I've actually
But the
looked
thing
into it.
that's
So
crucial, yeah,
Nathan, I
go
don't know
ahead.
if you know this, but there were like newspaper ads and articles from back in the day that I've seen. So that aspect was known and then removed. So the idea was that the farmers had equipment that they would use the power take off from the tractor, and basically they were like tilling the soil and then hitting it with like Tesla coils, so that the high voltage electricity would condensate nitrates out of the atmosphere, so that they could fertilize their own soil. But then that technology was removed, and we got a fertilizer industry, so that the farmers weren't self-sufficient in the ability to fertilize their own property out of the atmosphere.
Yeah, man. And that's why this stuff is like revolutionary because we could give people the means to grow food better without poison on it, for God's sakes. We
Yeah.
could like be doing practical things that you're not going to break bad. You're not going to blow up the world by infusing a seed with a plasma. You know what I mean? So it's ridiculous not to be doing these things that could desalinate water, that could give a light bulb at night, that can give warmth in the middle of the winter for free, for no like break bad scenario.
Right.
And just one real quick thing to connect the principles together and why I focus on the plasma, because that plasmoid, plasma toroid, ball lightning structure represents the structure of atoms and stars and the little bits of sparks between things. It's connected topologically as a shape kind of a thing that nature does. And that's part of the revolution is it connects all the scales, as Roy will talk about with his scale invariance and et cetera. So anyhow, I land in that little plane down, but it's this is very, very exciting, and I'm checking my messages every now and then to see if I've got a uh, some kind of okie dokie or some
Oh yeah,
criticism
you
back
got it.
from
I
Bob or
you
Janine.
when you
Anyway, I'm
talk
done.
about the plasmas and the space and the greater understanding and such, like this is one of the things that it's frustrating to me that I was able to winter at the South Pole Station and look at, the night sky there. Um, and what I saw, like the dense plasma star cosmos cluster, like there's not even words for what my eyes saw, but I saw it with great regularity, and all I could ever think of was like, we don't know what the fuck we're talking about. Like I can look outward and I can see, like with my eyes, what people spend like trillions of dollars for telescopes to try to copy. But the grandeur of what I saw just made me know, like, we don't know what the fuck we're talking about. Like, look what's going on out there. The vast majority of everything is plasma. It's like the least understood thing for us in what we can wield. So, certainly learning more about plasma, how to work with it, how to be in harmony with nature to get a practical use out of these systems that are functioning around us constantly. To me, it's like similar to understanding water and building a hydroelectric dam. There's a process of which we can mechanize a benefit from just engaging the process in harmony. I think this is what Tesla was getting at. This is what Schauerberger was getting at, is that if we learn how to build systems that are in harmony with nature, that, like, again, there's no limit to how much energy can be reaped from that harmonious engagement, and let alone when we start getting involved with like plasma systems, which is horribly misunderstood.
Yeah, and I want to shout out to Daz here, but if y'all would like, I'd be happy to go into real practical things that would
Yes,
make the world better to
yes,
do this late in just a moment. But we can talk. This isn't just pie in the sky.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
like transmuting pollution back into energy for ourselves instead of that. Anyway, whatever. Welcome, Daz. It's good to see you, buddy.
Hi, Nathaniel. Yeah, obviously, Dr. Hacker. I really just came up to support. Um, I finally listened to Eric on one of the documentaries and understand a lot more in terms of the energy weapons and what they can do, like in the earthquakes and stuff like that. I've been so bad when it comes to the research, so I would really just dance down this stage trying to speak when the two of you are on here. I'm really here just to support.
It's all good, Daz. Everybody does everything that they can. Your support is helpful. As you know, being on the speaker stage draws people in from your community, so we interconnect, and that benefit in and of itself is appreciated. Because I'm certainly trying to get this information out. I know Nathaniel's trying to get this information out. So many hands makes light work, and by all means, choose the role that fits you best as. And thank you for the benefit that you are providing. And thanks for taking a look at those documentaries. I imagine you're probably watching these things going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
I need to watch more of them. Now seeing that they're there, I'm gonna try and be like, okay, well, I know I've heard that this person is a counterintelligence. I know that this person, I've just got to like really just see what's being presented right now, and kind of take it from there. But yeah, I stumbled across this community being an experiencer. I wasn't a UFO nerd or geek or whatever, but deciding to stay in this community, it's now time to engage my intellect more and really go into more of the information.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I should put Nate as a co-host here just for being appropriate. And then we have J.K. Philly here with his hand up. Come on in there, sir. Fire away.
Good morning. How you doing, Eric?
Doing great.
And then I haven't spoken with Nathaniel for a while. How you doing, Nathaniel?
Oh man, I'm doing great. I'm kind of buzzing. I don't know if you caught the Bob McGuire thing. I clipped it and played it again. I stayed up all night, but like that was wild. Like he converged on the same thing. But anyhow, yeah, doing good.
Yeah, good, good. Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on what you said about seed generation. There's a gentleman that Bob Greenyer talks about, William C. Levengood, who's a scientist, botanist, and he studied crop circles, sounds like all his life. And there's a patent that he had brought up that Greenyer brought up, which is a method and an apparatus for enhancing growth characteristics using simultaneous AC/DC electrodes that you bombard with the seeds at a particular, maturity of the seeds that will enhance its growth. So the reason why he saw that, because he saw these effects from the crop circles, these rapid heating in certain areas of the crop circle. So that's pretty interesting, to kind of get away from these pesticides and do something that's a little bit more healthy for us.
Yeah, that's right on. And let me say, Eric, if you and Daz too, if you have the opportunity, in a science space or whatever, highly recommend JK for having some insight to things. A serious researcher, and yeah, so just Daz in the future going forward. I know you're trying to think about the community. I'm giving out few okie dokies, okay, and that's one of my okie dokies. But yeah, the Dr. Levengood patent is a big deal, and it has to do with these plasma interactions. Even if it's just a dielectric barrier discharge where you build up charge on one side and it jumps across a gap. That's all you need. You could basically turn tasers into farms. You know what I mean? Like farm tools.
That's right.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I was briefed on the value of Tesla coils, air resonant transformers, but I do recall in that conversation there was emphasis placed on that spark gap, that jump. It means a lot more than just being cool looking and sounding cool. There's a lot more going on when that energy jumps across, and I would be lying if I said I completely understood it, but I through the years, it's interesting to me that moment is often referenced to as being of great value, that jumping of the spark gap.
Yeah, it's very crucial, and it's one of the beginnings of the early plasmoid research with Winston Bostick. Part of the experimental apparatus was they made a spark into a donut, a quote plasma gun, or a quote a plasmoid injector, and they were able to, just like you puff a smoke ring, puff like this ring of plasma that they were able to stabilize. And these are pretty simple apparatuses. You just have to get it to like roll off at a point in order to pinch down, basically, just like you would, like whistle or make the right kind of shape required. Again, shape becomes crucial to this, quote, new physics.
Yeah, the whole idea of shape, the geometry of things, I think we've been observing the study of throughout history, but in, 2D forms that were representing 3D shapes. So I think a lot of people just weren't initiated enough to understand the big picture presentation. So to me, like the flower of life being a perfect example, it looks like, a bunch of rings laid across each other in a two-dimensional form. But, how many people realize that that's just a 2D representation of a 3D situation or more complex?
Yeah, and so this actually gets to what JK brought up with crop circle research. In the research here with plasma, you actually get a mechanism for crop circle creation with these field structures. Basically, whenever you're seeing a crop circle, and this comes from Robert Grenier, what is happening is you are having this dielectric barrier, which is the charge between the earth and then the ground underneath. Usually this stuff is happening over like chalk aquifers or something where charges can be like established. And so, and I'm not saying that they're all natural like lightning strikes or whatever that don't. I think that people could engineer this and another being could utilize it, by the way. But the point is, the way you would make a crop circle is with a plasmoid. Just as you were saying, the 2D slice of the 3D, that's what a crop circle is. It is a bisection or a slice of a fractal toroidal structure that is represented as what it looks like whenever you turn it up. And if you turn it and twist it in different ways and it has different structure order, you're going to have different, cymatic like slices. And you know that this is plasma because you can go in and you can find that there are these, effects that are happening on the ground level, creating like these microspherules, which is a characteristic of these like plasma discharges, like with the Earth, and like a lightning strike makes glass. It's something kind of similar to that. And then also with the way that the stalks are moved down, they've got like this. It's not a heated pressure and it's not a force pressure. There's something else going on as the magnetic fields are being twisting around this thing and laying things over. And you can see that it's like woven, and people talk about that. It's because we're talking about flow. There's flow in these magnetohydrodynamic systems. Of course there is.
Yeah, I think that's something that's omnipresent in the cosmos, that everything's flowing, everything's moving, everything's transforming, but just in ways that we've yet to observe, appreciate, or understand. But it looks like we got Upgrade up here with his hand up, and JK Philly, I see your hand up. I'm not sure if it's just the same hand from before, but let's let Upgrade jump in, and then JK Philly, if you want to, by all means, follow up.
So you said everything is moving. The way Walter Russell describes it is, yes, everything is moving. The way you can describe all physicality is through states of motion. There is only one substance in the universe, and it differs only in its states of motion. That every bit of dimensionality in the universe emerges from that motion. And the motion exists is this toroidal flow in specific points, but the toroidal flow is a convergence of two spiral waves that interfere with each other, but they pass through each other like unobstructed. And the way that they converge, the angles that they come together, determines the form of the matter. And you can see, Russell, I put in the purple pill, Russell's periodic table next to the harmonic resonance chart, and you can see how the carbon line is like the most round and it's like the most solid form of toroid, whereas like lithium and fluorine are extremely oblate and nebulous, right? Like carbon exists at the perfect fifth harmonic, whereas lithium and fluorine are, at the other ends of the spectrum, right? It's with the 16 to 15 ratio or the 15 to 8 ratio, or I'm not exactly sure if the harmonics of the standard 12 note scale or like it might even be like the Pythagorean scale or something else. But it's the matter exists at different harmonic resonances between the two apparent forces, which are really just the same force, just moving in opposite directions. Like electricity is polar and magnetism is equatorial, but it's the same force just moving in different directions, and the angles that they come together determines the form that you see. All form is a result of these states of motion, and it generates, and then it's held together by the pressures of the motion, and then it dissolves, right? So the core of the star, the core of the planet, is where the matter is generated, and it's generating and regenerating constantly. And as it spirals away from the star, it's coming apart. And so that the planets generate and then expand and decay and radiate their mass back out into the vacuum, and it's all cyclical.
I do like the idea of the planet expanding.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of what you say, I think, is right on there. Upgrade. I think that there's one little distinction that you might agree with me on, which is in these wave mechanics, there's a couple of things that can happen. You can have one wave pass through another wave, and it's kind of like just opposites, and they just move through. However, there's a specific interaction that comes up in the yin yang context and with these plasmas. That's a kind of a distinct feature of these creations, and that goes back to the smoke ring or the soliton or the stable configuration of these two opposed forces connected. And so rather than annihilating or passing through or one nodding and one unknodding, they can actually like balance out together. And then the stable balance is technically called this, there's this flow, which is called a Beltrami flow, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to get too technical about it, but basically the structure allows the plasmoid to stick together, particles to stick together, things to be coherent, and then you can look at the sun in a different way, and et cetera. So that's just like one maybe like little enhancement, I think, on what you're talking about, just to the point of phase conjugation. Whenever these two things are connected together and they have this force-free form, but all of their forces turn into a scalar potential. So whenever you have this bubble that's made up, then now the sum of all that, it's not E and B anymore. They're perfectly parallel and balanced out. Now they have a scalar potential, that longitudinal potential you'll hear about, etc. So, which, yeah, becomes very interesting in another way. And that's how we get back to topology. Start full circle, full circle.
I didn't have anything. I didn't really have my hand up, but I don't mind jumping in if you don't mind.
No, by all means,
Upgrade.
engage. We're mental jamming together.
Yeah, great. No problem. Appreciate it. Upgraded has a in the pill. He has like 4 little images. He talked about harmonics. I wanted to talk about the one that's on the top right. That's got the all the.
Sorry about that. I hit the mute button by accident trying to bring a request up. My apologies. Anybody there?
That was the Elon mute, Eric hit double mute. So yeah, we can talk now.
Oh, sorry about
That's
that,
good.
guys. My error.
Can you hear me? We're good.
I can hear you. Yes, sir. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. I just wanted to just emphasize on what Upgraded talked about in one of his posts in the pill. If you can look at the one that has 4 images, it's got a GIF, but the top right has got all the different wave harmonics. If you can see that one, the reason why I came about from all this is from a musical background, so I can relate to this and explain. I wanted to explain this in a musical term real quick. If you look at the far left is the 1-to-1 ratio. In music, you can relate that to the fundamental of a chord. And in the or even just let's say you hit a note on the piano or key or whatever instrument you want to use. Let's say that's your fundamental, your ground state, if you will. And if you look at everything to the right of that, actually everything exists in that dark blue 1-to-1. In other words, all the overtones that you see to the right of that actually are topological overtones that exist in the blue, if you will, if that makes sense. So that makes a lot of sense when Russell talks about the harmonics and the different elements that are basically a harmonic of hydrogen or whatever it might be. They're just more complex versions or behavioral versions. If you use Roy's terminology, its behavior becomes its, its characteristics. I forget, I'm kind of butchering what he's saying, but that's the idea. Like if you just pluck a string note, that tone, everything exists above it. And I just wanted to really, really stress that, because it's in music, it's in sound, it's also in matter, and it's also in electromagnetics. I just wanted to end it there.
No, that's fantastic for making those associations. I appreciate the clarification because, again, not that I'm an expert on these things, but I would just say in my research through the years, I've observed that there's connections to be discussed on these things. So I'm happy we're having this conversation.
Yeah, and it feels like not a lot of people talk about the connection between music theory and electromagnetism. I think
Hmm.
they're pretty much the same thing. They should obey the same rules. If the universe obeys its rules, it won't obey one. It shouldn't, obey one and disobey the other. It should
And then,
lend itself to both.
and then when we consider that reality could be frequencies in motion.
Perfect.
We got Mr. Wolf up here in the speaker panel with his hand up. Good morning, Wolf. Fire away.
Good morning. I've been listening, and for folks who are maybe new to this or who don't quite grok uh, some of the implications, if you know what cymatics is, where you strum a guitar or you have a plate with grains on it, and you introduce energy, sound energy into the system, you'll notice that patterns form, right? Resonance is set up, much as the elements on the periodic table fall within a kind of a like a champagne glass of order and hierarchy, right, based on their properties. If that happens in 3D space with just grains of sand and plates, right, imagine now it happening at much, much larger scales, planetary, solar system, galactic scales, wherever there's matter and energy, or matter and matter, or energy and energy, right? The proof of concept, whatever cymatics is downstream of, certainly, whatever that is, it can likely manifest in many other areas of nature, just as other aspects of algorithmic rules we can see, like the Fibonacci sequence or the Mandelbrot set, also appear in other parts of nature. So it shouldn't be a leap for people to listen to this and kind of think, well, if I don't understand the particulars, what might those particulars be downstream of that is actually a fundamental architecture of objectively discernible reality? And draw parallels between areas of life that you can tangibly appreciate. And it helps you bridge worlds of conception. That's all.
I
I
think
wanted
that's
to
great
piggy,
advice.
I wanted to piggyback on the cymatics and the idea of putting the sand on the flat surface and creating these shapes. That's the a parallel to the crop circle. And I wanted to compare, if you take a slinky, which is you can squeeze it, you can separate it or expand it. Now, if you could take a sound wave, pretend instead of the slinky being from, let's say, going from left and right to compress, decompress, compress, take the slinky and pretend that this slinky is a a sphere, if you will. Let's say you could do a slinky in a sphere shape. In other words, it'll expand, it'll compress, it'll expand, and now you have this sphere of sound that creates a cymatic 3D model, if you will. So that's exactly how sound works. These rarefactions and compressions that go outwards. And I just wanted to kind of put all these things together in a nice little package.
Yeah, no, upgrade. I think you're feeling it. You're driving. Yeah, yeah. Go on. I mean, that's right on. Semantics, and then also bubbles, right? Like there's a virial theorem all about like bubble dynamics and how energy flows across surfaces and the geometry that's encoded. It's think about it like a snowflake. You know what I mean? Like its parameters at the core define anyway. Blah blah blah. Yeah, upgrade over to you, buddy.
Yeah, I wanted to relate. So what JK was talking about with the strings and what you were talking about with the yin yang. So if you imagine each particle of space, time, whatever, has like a spherical yin yang, right? And that is the string, right? And when it's not moving, it doesn't appear to be anything, right? And when you pluck the string, then it's spinning up into that form of motion that is the yin yang, and it's the two opposing flows that appears to create that boundary that is the third thing, right? And that third thing that is the matter, right? Like that, without the oppositional flow, there is no appearance of form.
Yeah, and so you'll see these things that are again you have if you take your thumbs and like put both of them up in the air and then turn them out to your sides, so like your right thumb's pointing to your right and your left thumb's pointing to your left, and you just like keep doing that like up and out. You know what I mean? that's your helicity in these flows and these counter rotations. You can think about that like smoke rolling around, the small end of the donut, and that's that pull. There's a poloidal flow, which is that direction on the small side. There's also a toroidal flow all the way around it, right? And then there's a kind of like ride that's happening amongst both of those things, and there's this balance that's being achieved. So it's very yeah, I mean, and our DNA and twists, this gets into everything. This really unlocks quite a bit because, I mean, with Luc Montagnier, and you have frequencies that are able to transmit DNA. And then what we're talking about, the material of life in the cosmos is encoded in the vacuum and it can be called forth. We can just make DNA out of it and metals, and it's wild. It's a brand new frontier in this regard, and it'll take people in good faith to take it forward and to make it like a new blah blah blah. I've been up on line, but this is very exciting. Thank you all for being here. I'm stepping back so others might have a chance to double dutch in here and say something if they'd like. But I want to. At a time, I might go before too long. I have been up all night, but I'm going to stick around for a little while. I'm just like setting standards. But
No,
we
totally
could
understood.
talk about the things that are material benefits that these things could do.
Yeah,
We're
that's
talking
what I
about
wanted.
nuclear remediation.
Yep.
We're talking about energy sources. We've mentioned 11 good patents, which are utilizing these plasma technologies. There's ENG8. We can have safe X-rays, Griffin-Brock. So there's many principles here, and since this is recorded, I've said it, and so you can look them up. But if you just like a little bit briefly, part of the benefit of this technology is that you can affect matter. You can affect the decay of radioactive matter. So if that's the case, then what about all this radioactive waste? What if we could neutralize the signal like a noise canceling headphone, and like just neutralize that, and thereby also maybe uses it as an energy source? Well, that changes everything. Well, what about this thunderstorm generator, which uses plasmoid generation from counter-rotating vortexes to create like a core where magic is happening from these flows with a center that's depressurized in Bob Greener's model? I'm trying to be brief here, but that
Take your time.
can remediate exhaust. It can that alone is huge. Remediating exhaust entirely and replacing exhaust with oxygen on anything that has an engine that exhausts. This is revolutionary. That's just another aspect of plasma technology at work. That is the thunderstorm generator. Malcolm Bindle. There's controversy about him as a person, and there's controversy about whatever, but his stuff works. Replicated, done over and over, it works. And yeah. ENG8 also, go check them out. They are doing the fusion devices that we should have had so long ago, where it could be like a glass with a star in it, a star in a jar, powering everything you need, not a big tokamak ITER billion-dollar installation donut thing stuck in the ground. It doesn't have to be that big. It can be small. So these are some of the implications, the so what of what we're talking about. And I hope this paper that I'm going to present will ground it all in physics and give engineers a way to do something maybe they didn't know how to do and have a theory, and maybe for other people prove that it's real. That's open ambition and hope of like what I would like to get out of this,
Would I be crazy in thinking that this would also bring us in the direction of like, what was being discussed in antiquity, and maybe I'm using the right words or not, but I think you get the gist of where I'm going anyhow. The idea of like alchemy and transmutation of materials from one thing into another?
Yes,
yeah, I mean,
exactly.
by definition, you're doing that whenever you have these thunderstorms converting this oxygen. And yeah, these principles are real. What's up? I'll yield to that. It's kind of magical. And if one wants to be like enthusiastic and talk about this in a fun way and be imprecise, you can call it magic and say you're getting teleportation and transmutation and levitation and all sorts of Asians out of this. But if you want to be careful, you can say, well, we can control the synthesis of matter. We could reverse radioactive decay. We could transmute or synthesize material. And there's language for physics and mechanics of the stuff that's happening and has been happening in the dark for a long time.
I see we got Prometheus here in the space with his hand up.
Yeah, on this note of like transmutation of matter, trying to settle the bet I got with you to win that martini. We're down from a multi-million-dollar nano 500 backyard casting with some microwaves and magnets to make a brass coin that should pull power out of the ether. Because if anyone can go to my page and go for the third reply down, which is bluntly put philosopher showing how waves trapped in a standing resonating cavity, he's talking about them having mass, but more importantly, like JK talking about with sound and resonance here, we start oscillating peaks and like lowering points, right? So once you have that in place on the transmutation, that's how you can start to organize your atoms inside the materials you're working with into specific wave guides and pathways. Effect is heavy metal in one spot to pin an aether vortex. This we do a nitrogen vacancy defect. Very similar kind of way where you need to line up these gradients, which has never been done before because normally we don't do things like add EM in combination with microwaves and acoustics, as well as propane driving a forge and a few other things, potentially like adding flywheels and gyroscopes outside of it to even control the gravity gradient going on inside the casting bed. Because the more and more control you have, the more you can line up these defects, the more crazy dopants to metals that normally shouldn't be there and form aperiodic structures and tiles and pathways. It gets really weird and complicated. But then you can also think of it back in the simpler sense of like alchemy, like you said, like we'll burn this stuff down to ash, wash it with acids so only certain things remain. Other things that you can't wash with acids, burn in the crucible till the slag comes off, skim the slag away, combine the additives from the burned powder with the right metals, get better metals. Now we're just taking it to an extreme that hasn't been seen for thousands of years since the second Egypt built on top of the ruins after the flood, when those people started mastering sound-based stuff, because I'm pretty sure all the temples in Egypt are actually giant metamaterial sound reactors that used to be driven by like water pipe organs on the outside of the building to keep them constantly resonating alongside the about 2 gigawatts that Giza was constantly putting out and resonating the whole plateau with. So I think the ancients were really hitting on this. And this has all come from basically like seeing Jay Anderson take his flashlight and go up and put it up on that wall at Saqqara and proving to us that there are those hieroglyphs that show up when you light up the wall and move them around. And then me asking Grok and being like, what would it take to make that wall in the modern day? And Grok being like, well, you'd need some really advanced autoclaves. Problem being, those autoclaves would have to be the size of a room or bigger, because those blocks Jay is standing in front of are like meter block size or more. Like they're bigger than him. Like they're huge megalithic blocks. So like the Egyptians didn't have autoclaves. They must have had some way where they were casting sound into materials to align stuff to form things like those hieroglyphs. Because the other problem is there's no site in Egypt where there's anywhere with wood or kilns that was mass burned to do all the chemistry. So they must have been using another energy source than burning wood. So sound is the only remaining option based on all the material samples they have. That's my spiel.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, I absolutely believe that in greater antiquity, there was better understanding of the things that we're attempting to re-understand now, which was kind of the point of my whole touching on the idea of transmutation, and that it appears to have been an activity that was going on in the past.
Yeah, it's quite wild to be hitting on all this because, technically, like, I just wanted to fix my sick kid. I didn't come into UFOlogy to be a grifter like anyone else. Obviously, I haven't set up here's my t-shirt page. I'm just here to talk and have fun and solve the physics. So, like, I've just been shown step by step how to, like, do the necessary things to be able to use wavelength frequencies to grow a motor cortex inside my son's skull without having to open him up and install a Neuralink because it's not needed. I mean, it's not tomorrow, but this is why, like, when you're like, oh, I don't know if you're gonna finish it. It's like, yeah, maybe if everything goes wrong, but unless my kid suddenly croaks in the middle of the development process, I'm not about to give up today or tomorrow or in 2 years or 5 years or 15 if that's how long it takes if he's still around.
I'm getting a chuckle. I was just reading. This is streaming on YouTube right now, and somebody put in the comments, transmute steel into brittle dust. I'm chuckling at that one because it's like, that's on the possibilities list for sure.
And I see we also have a upgrade here, but I would just say that I think that some of the things Prometheus was talking about, the say the resonance basis of things, the mechanism of the pyramid, all this stuff. I think that's there's a lot to recommend it, as well as what you were just saying, Eric. And all of this, I highly recommend everybody follow Bob Grinier. He's at Quantum Heat on X, Quantum Heat, and he will be able to tell you all about crop circles, 9/11, the Mark McCandlish UFOs, low energy nuclear reactions, now called coherent energy transformations. Everybody's got to get their language rights,
Oh, they got another word for it?
Coherent energy transformations. It's better. Trust me. I know it's a little awkward.
Oh, no, it's just the compartmentalized stuff. So it's like, oh, of course, there's another little package of material hiding under another coherent subsection. Because obviously there's the coherent matter wave beams. And so now they're moving a lot of the atomtronic stuff under this coherent label.
Yeah. Let's jump back over to Upgrade.
Exactly.
Right?
I apologize for that. Once somebody puts their hand up and they speak, I often, unfortunately now, get concerned that it's just a shadow hand. So pardon my poor hosting skills, but go ahead, Upgrade. Sorry, and thanks for waiting.
No, it's cool. I'm here to back up a lot of what Proud is saying also, right? Like, we're working on a lot of the same things. Good to see you, man. Matter transmutation is a big part of this. But one of the things I wanted to respond to was what Nathaniel was talking about stabilizing radioactive materials. So what I was talking about these pressures holding everything together is that it's what we know of as our radioactive decay rates only exist as such under our current field conditions, right? Like, and as you get closer to the star, things are more generoactive and more stable. As you get farther away from the star, the galactic core, they're less stable and they come apart. And this is this field stabilization is entirely necessary for space travel, right? Like, it's the idea of like getting in a ship that like Elon Musk wants to send people to Mars and Starship, and it's just not going to work, right? The field pressures out there are different, and I think this is why they had to fake the moon landing video, because anybody you send up there is just going to die until you master this field stabilization. We can't exist off of Earth, right? Like, the ISS is close enough that it's fine, but everything else, it's not happening until we master this.
I'll use that as a good example as to why we don't even have enough info to form a theory of everything.
Well, now it's funny you say that. We do have a geometric unifying theory that derives leptons and quarks, and I do believe the graviton too nowadays. It's might not be perfect.
I'm going to disagree on the graviton. I don't believe in gravitons based on my math, but yeah, I get what you're saying with most of that stuff. I've got my geometric derivations begin in like June, and then once I found VFD stuff from Lee Smart, and I discovered in September that my geometric operator for E equals MC squared actually derived into and expanded on and connected into the entire monster group math series. I had all my geometry already, so I've seen most of this stuff like live out of the simulators. I've done about, I think, 2,000 hours I calculated when I was doing a little write-up I posted in the pill below before I joined the space. So I've spent a lot of time seeing it all come out of this stuff. The biggest thing for me is the biggest kicker was when Dr. Salvatore finally said that when you actually break space-time, you break the Schwinger limit. Because I'd figured out how to break the Schwinger limit like 3-4 months before I heard him explain it. So I've just been trying to find the language in standard model physics to explain everything I discovered. Because I figured out how to make floating coherent matter wave beam mini version of the Tic Tac in June through geometry and metamaterials design. And it was start of August. J.K. Philly told me about coherent matter wave beam, so I actually had the name for it. So I could go look at other patents and figure out what I derived. It's been a pretty wild ride trying to find the language for all this.
Nathaniel, I'm curious if you could humor me. The word neutrino keeps showing up in your research, and obviously that's a term that's near and dear to my heart that I would like to know more about. What is it that's going on, and what with neutrinos in your research? What's that's cutting edge stuff that I know a bit about, but certainly there's more to learn, which is why it's at the front edge of science. What are you finding out with neutrinos, sir?
Yeah, so one interesting thing in the vortex model, there's a couple of interesting things, but basically, what are we talking about, right? They're really small. They're really small bits, right? In the standard model, it's like a very small thing. So, like, how do we account for that? How is that connected to the vacuum? How is that is that our dark matter? That kind of thing. And so neutrinos in this view are considered as like the constituent parts of the vacuum. There's a balance that's going on, and they're like tiny, tiny, tiny vortexes. They're not yet big enough vortexes to be a thing, but they're enough of them together can add up. They can collect. And in my kind of view of thinking about it, we can look at this as a replacement for the old atom piling up that we used to think about, where we can actually just kind of like add more spools and get more things in this geometric interpretation of what these very small particles are. And because they are also the structure of the vacuum that are getting kind of like twisted up into these vortices and things like that, then it solves for what you would have heard Science Bob say, is that it just gets rid of the interpretation of dark energy, dark matter. Like that's not how to see things going on. Rather, things are more like that's like a background where we're in the render. Like that's kind of like the latent like everything else besides right now. And it accounts for this tension with the kind of dance that's happening as things are interacting with this vacuum and coming into and out of existence with it. And these little bitty whirls are responsible for light in this view. That goes to the Burley. He has a neutrino theory of light that was introduced in the early 1900s, 1932, I think. And it was very interesting as you have these like a photon is maybe a quasi-particle of like bound up neutrinos, but there wasn't really a mechanism, and we didn't have an aether, quite, and there wasn't really a topological model for what that would look like, except now we do have one of those. We could say that these things are kind of like braided together, or they're binding instead of pushing off each other. Just kind of like magnets that if you turn them one way and turn them the other way, they have a different kind of interaction. So neutrinos are like the bittiest bit of a vortex, the tiniest whirl that there is. And all of those whirls are compactified and dense in this vacuum, which is containing a bunch of those. And that's where it gets its super solid, dense state. And things are interacting in that vacuum to swirl up into something, relative to this pressure that's, kind of balanced. There's like an up and down pressing together. And if you could imagine taking out a little bit more of the down force, then the up force behind you might, and this is kind of like what Alcubierre people think about when they see it as like pressure differences pushing you around or whatever. But I see it as, just like parting the sea in a way. You're polarizing this vacuum now, and things kind of like get out of your way whenever you can do that. And I think that's what this breaking is all about. This when people talk about breaking the space-time fabric, I think they're really just kind of like swirling a little tunnel through it.
have you come across anybody doing research in regards to the manipulation of neutrinos or the field for which they function in?
Oh, absolutely. This is where Alexander Parkhomov, Parkhomov, he's a living physicist now in Russia. He was is a part of the nuclear physics community in Russia, and he did extensive research on neutrinos. And he did a very interesting experiment where um, there is an effect in electronics called flicker noise. It happens on transistors where there's like just random noise that happens, right? And part of the idea is that this random noise might be, connected with this background, And so what he did was he recorded the noise over a week at a really slow recording rate. So he was really capturing a lot of this noise data over weeks, and then at the end of the recording, what he did was he fast forwarded that recording of this noise, right? And what he found was that there was something like a signal to it, and that the noise itself was modulating when you looked at the data around planetary motion, which goes to say that there's something else going on than just randomness here. There's some kind of order. There's a flow that things are moving in. And so that opens up your neutrinos, because neutrinos are this vacuum basis in this view. It is the aether parts. It's like the aether bit molecules that we're talking about. I believe it's the hydro of the magneto-hydro dynamics. And that's where superfluidity inside super solidity comes into play in this realm, is because you have densities of these neutrinos that are building up into matter or falling back into vacuum.
Almost sounds like time dilation. You're squeezing the unit of time, one over frequency. How Sal talks about, to hear these patterns. And then Greener also uses the term relic neutrino. If you wanted to expand upon that, Nathaniel.
Oh, I mean, this is where these phases get interesting, because if you just had something that was all of a certain kind of consistency, there's a word for that where it's like homogeneous, or it's like all the same, right? But it gets different when you have densities, because then you could have these things that are clusters of neutrinos. And Bob Grenier talks about things in a kind of like a jelly-ish fashion, that there could be these like kind of like composites of this stuff, this proto.
I prefer to model it as condensate science before it decays to superfluid.
Yeah, that's. I think I'm getting there, because if you take this super solidity, within super solidity, you get superfluidity as like an interesting property of super solidity, and whenever you get that, you can also have these arrangements and these organizations and these clusters and this jellying. So there's kind of like a phase of matter going in here, even with neutrinos, where it's like solid neutrinos, or like more liquid neutrinos, or maybe more like clumpy neutrinos. And the idea is that there's some of these relic neutrino clusters, which are these aggregate, these like what I think about as having some kind of information in them. That's my view now. I'm not saying that, or maybe that's my interpretation of other things, but that's my out on a limb, is that there's order in this vacuum as well. That's one of the
implications. Yeah, I've definitely. Neutrinos are high up on my list to take a look into pretty soon, because I've got a huge suspicion they have a huge underrelation with like basically being the Dirac sea of electrons, or the source of it, and basically the same kind of terms you're describing right now for these aether vortex dynamics. It's just been so long since I touched on any of that stuff on where particles are coming from that I can't even remember, because all my stuff deals with the like 12 gradients of like entropy and order braiding across each other, showing that even quantum mechanics is a symptom, just like the particles coming out of all the interactions of the scalar waves, constructive and deconstructive interference below the third dimension. So my system's a little different, because it just dialed into like the causal stuff. So like some of the symptoms, like the neutrinos, I don't even know what the fuck they are, where they're coming from, but I want to.
Yeah, and in my kind of like a view that I have in my head is, if you look at the yin yang, each of the two curls are properly called paisleys. If you see a paisley shirt, you'll notice that they actually are the yin yang like teardrop curve thing. So those paisleys has a yang, has a yin in it, say. The yang being the dark and the yin being the light. Now, and if you look at it that way, then you might be able to take this yang force as like the vacuum around which this yin circle is established. You can flip it over and go the other way around too, right? And go over to the yin and the yang inside the yin. But if we go back to the yang and the yin inside the yang, then there's something you could see as like kind of a geometric structure going on there, which I think is critical in these understanding the vacuum, because it's like Thomas Bearden said, take whatever you want from Bearden, but the biggest joke is that you can have a string suspended without an instrument, held by nothing. And getting back to the vacuum, us being in it and a part of it, and then our relationship gets interesting. And what could scale to the, hold on just one second, and what could scale to the vacuum and everything else, the common mechanism are these vortex structures, which are, you can have very little ones, very fractal, just keep dividing and you can get in all that you need, just keep going, just keep dividing. That's the beauty of fractions. Or you could, be adding this stuff up and getting things to have scaled structure, all with a vortex mechanism. And I think that's like one of the cool takeaways with the paradigm.
Have you heard of Valsov-Poisson equations for modeling a self-dimensional, self-gravitating one-dimensional Aether sheet?
No, I haven't.
I built all my cosmology math around that, but I'm kind of wondering if maybe the yin yang is when it hits the second dimension and it goes from being like a Mobius sheet that's one-sided to being two-sided because it's two-dimensional or something.
Yeah, if everybody, for you right now into the room, Eric noticed this before when we were just talking and warming up. If you will go to my go to my account and look at my pinned thing, and then follow what that thread is about vortex-based mathematics and the Roden-Alba cipher and the mechanics that come out of this other way of doing math. It's beautiful. And it has a lot of answers that you're going to be looking for, because the Aether is modeled within it. And like the 0 point and all of that is modeled within this. In fact, if people would go and just
the stuff I posted as of December 1st already includes all that. Like, it's a complete model of the universe that reduces dark matter, dark energy down to 1% and like fully geometric, complete. Like, nobody's ever posted anything like that before. It's just not posted as like a unified model. It lives as scattered math throughout my posts because I meant it only to be accessible to anyone smart enough to realize it exists and to punch in the 2 tags for it, to ask Grok to like rederive the equation sheets.
Guys, I just want to jump in. I just want to jump in for 2 seconds. I was notified that I'm having an echo issue on the video stream for this chat, so I'm just going to reset my soundboard. It should take me about 10 seconds, but it might mess up the conversation. So if you can just give me a few seconds, I'm going to reset it, and we'll come right back in. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but let's see what happens. Can you guys hear me?
Roger.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, loud and clear. Yeah,
Excellent.
I was just rounding off and finalizing this thing. Yeah, sorry, I don't have proper papers and articles as much on the exotic physics because I come from the mystery school side, so I believe that it should only be derivable by anyone smart enough to realize, oh, the lock is there and the key's beside it, but I just have to put the key in the lock and turn it.
If you guys check Russell's periodic table, you'll see there's like 20 elements before hydrogen. Hydrogen's on like the carbon line of the 3rd octave. These toroids, they exist in octaves of each other. Like they're basically the same thing, but like silicon is twice as big as carbon and so on.
Yeah, that's right on. And so again, I'm probably going to have to go and take a little nap. I got some chores to do and stayed up all night, and I hope to hear back soon about this. But the big takeaway was the fractal toroidal geometry adds all this stuff up. Why? Because it connects all the principles of rotation, spheres, tori, da 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 da. So that's kind of where I'm standing here. It's just been a long night. I really appreciate talking with y'all and everybody listening. And once I've got an okie dokie or something, I might feel a little bit more. We dive into it a little bit more deeply. Right now, I'm not sure if there's outstanding errors, but I've kind of done the best that I can at the moment. So we're just kind of see how it goes. But yeah, no, it's very exciting, and we'll have a conversation coming up before long with Janine Nielsen. I hope someone's reached out and is setting that up, and waiting to hear back from Science Bob and her. I sent the paper over to her too, and yeah. So before we go, I just want to check in with everybody, do a little round robin. Eric, back over to you. Is there any other maybe final thing that you wanted to scratch an itch on? I don't have to go exactly right now, but just winding it down.
No. I totally appreciate it. Thank you. I know you've been up for many hours, and I'm just laughing at imagining you going to sleep right now and being concerned about waking up. Just a little chuckle on my end.
No, thank you. That's right. Could I play for you in the room just that little part from Science Bob last night? I know that some people have heard it, some people haven't, but I have it queued up here. If it would.
What, the one from MySpace?
Yeah. All right. Here we go. 1 second.
The fine structure constant is one of these things that no one knows how to calculate. They only can measure it. And so we have all sorts of things like that in physics that are measured and no one knows where they come from. And so the not knowing where things come from says that the models we have way too many degrees of freedom. And what is the manifestation of these degrees of freedom? They are integrals that you have to put a fudge factor.
Oh, hey, I see a hand. So I wanted to jump over to Daz. You'll remember that space. I was playing a clip of it. Did you have something at the moment, or would you like to say it after it plays? Or I do see.
No, after. Please don't stop on my account. After.
All right. Love you, buddy. All right, here we go. Hold on. Playing this little bit.
On to keep them from being infinite. Measures of the quantum vacuum energy that are 200 orders of magnitude too large. Okay, so I've done a thing, and I says, this looks pretty neat. I says, it really does constrain these degrees of freedom in the universe. It was inspired by early work by Roger Penrose. Okay. And so it's a constraining geometry on the universe. Not like geometric unity. It's much more constraining than that. And so I started doing some calculations. The first thing I realized is, oh my goodness, looking at this geometric constraint, I now can compute the fine structure constant. So I went on a little further. And I said, okay, all this other stuff, this wiggles around the dynamics here, so forth, so on. This is the way things fit together, and realized
Science
the way they fit together constrained the dynamics they can have. And this constraining dynamics they can have gives you the quantum vacuum energy. It is exactly what is measured in the labs. No, now we're getting somewhere. And if I may not be all the way there, but I'm going to put it out there and hope it inspires others to go finish it if I can't.
Excuse me, can I jump in here just because I was invoked? Fort masses derived as well as leptons.
Of the constraints, I'll share this with you. You're gonna, it's dense. But it's, after working on it about 2 months, I have it down so that it's understandable by those involved. Yeah, we'll trade papers.
So you have a geometric / topological derivation. Are you using hop fibers or
See, this is why Nathaniel ought to be in this and ought to go to school and do it. The first word in the framework is Hoff.
I'll pause it right there for effect. The man himself is here. I've sent the paper. I've been wondering if I might. Yes. Yep. Anyway, yes.
I summoned him and he came. Thanks for coming, Science Bob. I didn't really summon him. I just sent him a DM just to let him know that it's going on. Who signed Science Bob? Well, no Science Bob. I wonder if he's going to come up.
Yeah, so yeah. Well, there we go. I mean, it would have been weird if he didn't at this point, right? He's kind of constrained geometrically.
Yeah, my opinion is that we are truly getting somewhere, and that there's enough of this work going on by different people in different centers using different approaches that we are actually all really diving in close. So far, I haven't seen anyone else that's using Penrose's tensor networks the way we're using it in this paper. And so I think it's unique, but again, it'll take time. It's going to take me 2 weeks to 2 months to get the damn thing up on archive. So, I have to go turn on my email account at Virginia Tech, sign the papers that say I'm affiliated so that they will ever put it up. Then I got to go find 5 people in mathematical physics that will use my little code that say it's okay to put it up on archive. And this is the method they're using for filtering people's stuff. And I'm just going to follow the process and get it done and talk about what the nature of it is. But the details are going to wait until I get it sent off to a journal and on archive, because that's just the only way these days that's available at all to protect your work. I mean, patents are worthless. They are a license to steal. So, and I'm not interested in commercializing it as much as I am interested in, yeah, he did this, and others can use it to do other things that I don't have time to do. So I'm happy that the first author is a woman who's been working on this problem for 20 years. And she was never going to get where she needed to because she's an autodidact without a single degree. But that didn't mean she's not smart, because boy, she is. But there were places where she couldn't glue things together. I came in and took my 50 years of differential geometry and all this other crap. And I says, oh, this is this means this is how you glue this together. And in the end, when we looked at it, all of a sudden we were calculating the fine structure constant, the quantum vacuum energy, showing that gravity is emergent, showing dark energy and dark matter are fiction, modified Newtonian dynamics is correct, except for there's an error, and we corrected the error. So, I mean, it's just a ton of stuff, but you got to realize, listen to what I'm saying. It sounds like somebody waved a magic wand and there was a miracle. So this is going to take a lot of time to vet, and it is likely to have errors, but it's a great step. That's all I'm saying.
Now, maybe this is something you'd like to do privately. I'd hope to talk a little bit more about it. I'd be happy to go through the paper and some of the reasoning. I wonder if on its face, though, you can see where I'm going with it, with the Beltrami flows and grounding it in these stable.
I have 3 contracts. 2 of them have major events this afternoon, tomorrow, and Thursday. I simply don't have time to look at it this week.
That's all right. Thank you even for telling me that you couldn't. I appreciate it. I will look forward to anything that you have to say when you do, and I won't sit by the phone waiting up for you. Okay.
That being said, hey, look, good work.
Don't give up, keep up.
All right. Well, okay. Well, I guess I'm gonna take that. It's not the okie dokie that I needed a sanity check, and you'll understand that. That's why I'm passing it around to people. And yeah. But I do.
Nathaniel, just let me interrupt for 1 second and tell you how pissed off I am on your behalf that they have these filters in place that nearly completely prevent someone like you of putting it up on the necessary places it needs to get widely reviewed before it's turned into your final peer-reviewed publication. It is the bureaucracy in this now and is ridiculous. And they're trying to keep just every Tom, Dick, and Harry for sending them their latest free energy paper. I mean, I understand what they're doing, but when someone has a good idea like you or me or anyone else, there are a ton of hoops to jump through. I'm lucky. I have an affiliation and a PhD, and so I have all the quote tickets that others don't, and it's not right. So I'm going to do what I can to read it, and I promise you, Nathaniel, if there's any way I can help, I will, because what I care about is understanding the universe, because I want to get off this planet and go see what Orion's Nebula looks like from the inside.
Oh man, thanks so much. I hope it is worth your look. I just I appreciate it. Whatever you could. I've thought about that too. I might ask if you have some other time, or anybody listening who is in a position, if I could get a little bit of advice on something. I've thought about, for example, going and getting trying to appeal for an honorary doctorate and have you force them to someone assess me, someone give me homework, or grade me please, and maybe get around something that way, or not at all and do what Ken Shoulder said, which is I don't need a PhD, I'll get around it some other way. And so I'm just trying to figure out what to do here in this landscape. And maybe I don't have to do anything except have done it, and it'll just make a ripple in the universe or something. But I do think there's something to offer on top of other field frames. I do think there is something of a contribution. Go ahead.
Freeman Dyson never, no one will ever underestimate Freeman Dyson's contribution, since he's the person that showed Tomanaka, Feynman, and Schwinger had equivalent theories, and he wrote the version we all now use. Freeman Dyson did. He never had a PhD.
Wow, that's interesting. And just so you know, I approach this as just like a synthesis. I see lots of pieces of the puzzle, and I wanted to see if they click, and it turns out by numbers, like the churn numbers. Maybe you came across churn numbers. But there's just things that connect with the principles that are geometric. And so it's very fascinating. And again, I will leave it off the table, but I would be happy to have a longer conversation with somebody because it's few and far between. You might have heard my questions to Eric Weinstein. I don't know if you heard about that interaction. I have a clip of it on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, because after I wrote my four, there is no way for geometric unity to escape these four devastating faults. And then I made the horrible mistake of sharing that with Jack Sarfati. so Eric Weinstein and I are not exactly buddies these days. I mean, I'll give you an example. Oh, never mind. I'll send you. It's very short. I'll send you a PDF. But there's four devastating problems with geometric unity. For example, the Schwab operator, he needed to have actual dynamics so he could have field equations. He can't do it the way he did it, so there's no Schwab operator. So the rest of the paper is fluff and poop. So I mean, it's just, in other words, he needed a peer review, and he refused to do it. well, whatever. Anyway, all right, I got to run, and thank you, Eric and Nathaniel, for letting me speak, and I look forward to talking to you later. And thank you, Daz, as always, for poking me and telling me to come join. I'll see you guys later. I'm sorry I can't stay, but I got a ton to do.
All good, sir. Thank you for coming by. Appreciate it.
That was nice. Now I get to exhale and not worry about, yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now you're not going to be stressing out for a week or so. Be like, he hates my work.
Yeah, Daz, what's up, buddy? Thanks for being patient.
No, I just figured, I felt like it would just be helpful for you to have him here, because it seemed like you had that connection in the space yesterday, and I could tell you're a bit neurodivergent. Your mind was just processing. So I figured if he just comes in, there may be some things that you could just tie up with him. So I hope that helped. And I feel like that's the second exchange I've observed and witnessed with the two of you, and it's like I do not know what you lot are talking about, but it just feels really fascinating, and like you're talking to a future version of myself. So I appreciate the interaction.
Well, and I really want to win this martini from Eric, so I'm working really hard on figuring out some 0-point metal forges and stuff. So I'm between everybody trying to publish, and if publishing doesn't work, we'll hopefully eventually have a material synthesis forge out in the backwoods of the world where all the 0-point community can get together and we can build a UFO and just leave.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a meant to be. People need to know about this. I am here as an advocate. This isn't exactly how I want to spend my free time. In like communicating these things, but I feel like there's a moral responsibility to like spread this gospel a bit, because it can change the world and solve all of our problems.
My version is before we go anywhere.
Prompt, please. Yeah.
He talks over all the time, so yeah, maybe use the mute.
All right. Well, we'll just try and bend our wheels a little bit here and have a more topological confinement of our internal energy dynamics. And just hold on there for a second. I've forgotten where I was going, but if you'll just let me do a little spiral. See, this language and metaphor, it's like useful for everything. Also, Daz, your face, is like a cut apple. You know what I mean? With like the eye and the mushroom cloud on either side, and like the nose going down like the stalk of the mushroom, and like all these geometries, like that's the half of a donut. All this stuff shows up. So, there's really an intuitive way to understand it. The only reason I'm communicating and writing the way that I am now is to prove it to a community and speak math at them, because they have a way they need to hear it. I can't invoke the obvious beauty of the flower of life in their language to them. I have to get them, you know what I mean? And that's disappointing, but it's challenge accepted. You know what I'm saying?
May I ask you a question about geometry?
Yeah. Then? Please.
I've always been fascinated with sacred geometry. And I know that like the platonic solids are all able to fit into the flower of life. And then they come together and they make Metatron's cube. And, there's a significance with this when it comes to our consciousness. I guess my question is, when it comes to like the unified field and stuff like that, are we required to understand these geometric patterns? Because when I think of the ancients, they were aware of the significance that these geometric patterns had for humanity and for consciousness, and I just feel like that information's lost. And I think as I move across this app, you're one of the only people who seems to have a grasp, you and Roy, on the geometric. So are you able to?
Yeah, you're completely right, and that's what the Science Bob was talking about when he says the word topological. He's talking about like shape. It's like just a synonym. So when we're talking about these geometries, we're talking about, as you are, a square, a circle, a circle that's pinched a little bit at the poles, a circle that's pinched all the way, right? These are different having circles inside that donut and circles on the circles that are inside the donut. There's all sorts of geometries that come up, and they are connected in this sacred geometric, as one of the other speakers, JK, was talking about, this musical relationship. It's not a metaphor. It's an analog way that the world is, this wave-based harmonic understanding, and it connects to light. That's why we have these color mixing. It follows harmonic ratios, turns out. And there's all sorts of connections that are really intuitive, and they're natural, and you've seen it in a tornado and like raindrops on a surface of water. All of this stuff connects, and it's not abstract, quantum, virtual, blah blah. Like that stuff doesn't come into it. And there are real shapes. I recommend for anybody who wants to get to what I think is like the frontier of this stuff laid out, and is Larry Reed's Quantum Wave Mechanics, 4th edition. You don't have to know any math, and you don't even have to read. You can just look at the pretty pictures. And in this book of 500 pages by a 30-year senior Lockheed Martin engineer, you're going to find the Merkaba in his mathematics about gravitation, because these geometries are a part of it. And that's what makes things sacred in this, is that it's related to us. It's why your hands are left and right,
When you say the Merkaba, do you mean the double tetrahedron?
Yes, that's one of the geometries that are important.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I will process that, and I will look more into your work, because I didn't realize that your work was so much based on the geometries. Like I said to you before, Nathaniel, I haven't really had the opportunity to be in your spaces. So when I saw that you was here, and after having that little interaction with you in my space yesterday, I'm like, okay, I really want to listen in. But you definitely have seemed to have understood a very sacred aspect of reality that I think science and the 1% don't want people to know. So I think if Science Bob can help you get some of this work more looked into, it feels very important, because with all of my esoteric studies, when it comes to the geometrics, there's something very powerful that they don't want us to know.
Yeah, and just real quick, I see we have hands, and I appreciate it. And Upgrade, I really it's nice talking to you, and good to see everybody here. I just wanted to say that to the point about like getting involved, like this is a collective effort, and a lot of people are knowing about this, and it's becoming like kind of like a little bit of an awakening, and it's there's natural phenomena to describe this stuff, but the main takeaway here is that this is powerful. That's why it's a secret, because it's powerful to know this. It's like someone telling you, like discovering a gun and being like, oh no, all we found was swords, Meanwhile, people, you know what I'm saying? It's like they're hiding power. It's not because it's like interesting. It's because it's useful as F, right? We can make matter. We can make energy. We can make light. We can make warmth. We can make plants grow better. We can make like water desalinated. We can make exhaust oxygen. It's magic, man. And if you knew about that and wanted to, I don't know, control everything for your own personal selfish greed and avarice, then you might keep it a secret and discourage anybody from thinking we've done anything in 100 years since the Solvay conference in quantum mechanics, and we're just rocket people. That's it. So the thing is, this gets to the bottom of, like DNA evidence with money, the story of what's going on in the UFO world, because there's a physical heritage that connects back to all the people that you know by name of science people. And there's a common story that is revealed, and it connects to energy and propulsion, and it does what you would expect some like breakthrough technology to do. It looks natural, it's powerful as all get out, and it has a way of describing everything else underneath it as a part of it, not the other way around. It's not like a little piece of the standard model that we're going to talk about. This is over the standard model. It makes sense where the standard model doesn't. And it says, well, it just is this way. We say why and how and the shape of it. And it's a yin yang.
Man,
Good night,
Nathan,
everybody.
almost like it would be so important that it would be worthy of some folks to consider monopolizing it for themselves.
Yeah, precisely. And so part of the channel and the work, I've got a couple of interviews out on my YouTube channel, and I've got please go subscribe. Maybe one day I'll get 100 people. I've got interviews coming out with, you'll see one there with Roy I did, and I've got one with Stan Deyo and Bob Grenier, where Bob Grenier interviewed Stan Deyo. It was one of the highlights of my life. That'll be coming out this week. And we're going to try, now that I've got this behind me, I kind of went into a shell to do some of this work, but now I feel like I know what I'm talking about a little bit more to go forward on it. And so we're going to be, trying to do interviews and talking to people and shake this stuff up. But it's just important to understand this stuff is like really good for us to get light magic out of the hands of like dark magicians. Like these guys have weaponized it. We need to use it to make like healing technology. So my thing is, it's open secret science because anybody could figure it out if they looked at it. It's an open secret, right? The papers are there, the observables. It makes sense if you follow the money and follow the science and follow the physics. And anyhow, yeah.
Man, imagine if there's a platform that you could use, Nate, that wouldn't throttle you so much.
Oh, well, it's funny you say that because I've just become a part of a fantastic little network over at deciphering.tv. You can see the video of what we're doing when we can play music and do things we can't do on YouTube over at deciphering.tv. We've done a couple of streams over there. It's very cool, and we're going to be doing that. It's like I can't get kicked off, right? They can delete all my YouTube stuff. I've got it backed up. They can kick me off of X or whatever, and then we'll just be a weird corner over at deciphering.tv. Because we're breaking out physics, it's too big of a story to tell because it disrupts all the power systems. It's like they don't want us to have peace and abundance on this earth, and yet we can take it.
Yes, we can. Many hands makes light work, and this is why I've really enjoyed following Nathaniel's growth here. This is amazing. I really appreciate the time that you gave us here, Nathan. I know you want to get out of here, so and I know you have trouble exiting. So I'm going to demand your departure.
Thank you. I love it. I'm keyed up. I love it.
I know. I totally get it. And you do this on your own spaces. You do this in my spaces as well. So I'm going to request that you leave, sir, for your own sanity. Get
Thank
some
you.
rest.
Kick me out.
Yeah.
If people wanted to hear me, invite me to things. I will do interviews or come up and speak, but only if people are interested in like a certain kind of a conversation. Otherwise, I'll just listen and have fun. And also, just kick me out at the end of things, and I will. I'm forced out of here. Stop. Ow. 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 Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'm going. All right. Okay. It's cold. Let me get my jacket. All right. Hold on.
Yeah, go warm up the car. It's chilly out.
All right.
But
Love y'all. It's been
thank
fun.
you so much, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful.
Sleep well, Nathaniel.
All right. Take care, y'all.
You got it, sir. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. But that was fantastic. I caught Nathaniel in his own space this morning, and he was having technical difficulties. Apparently, I'm having technical difficulties today. So it just is what it is. But I wanted to get his attention, A, for my own selfish understanding of what he was discussing this morning, and then B, since it was just lining up with Cawffee Talk, I invited him to come in. I had initially had a different topic posted, but I figured it was a worthy audible to switch gears and go in this direction, because I do think it's very important. I think that, we the people have been lied to for a very long time about the reality around us, how it functions, and the benefits for which we could possibly reap from having a more appropriate understanding. But with that being said, I do see that there's a couple of hands up here, so I'm just going to go linear with, go ahead, Mr. Prometheus, and then we'll go to upgrade.
Upgrade is technically first, so I'll keep it short because I was going to keep it fairly short anyway. On the geometry side, I got one for your whole trade, actually. The geometry for the Merkaba math frozen into pipes suggests that with the right geometry for hot and cold loops as countercurrents, I think it's the same material as thermocouples, but it might be one of different electromagnetic colored ones that convert heat to electricity on there, and bifilar copper coils. So two different directions of copper coil. It should be possible to build like a 30-centimeter sphere. Just the difference between the hot and cold water. And correct me on this, it's either high single digits or low double digits for geothermal heat recapture systems, right, Eric? This system would actually get 74% efficiency on heat reclamation just using this 0 point topology and not even doing any fusion or anything trippy. So like the math on the geometry and pipes and just water movement and difference between hot and cold gradient and pulling out of the vacuum with that alone is obscene. Just to talk about what they want us to stay away from, because if we could I'll hire Eric and everybody like Eric to come over and manufacture one of these for our house, because they have the jigs to bend the pipe and just got to assemble it all. Where would the money be for any of them aside from a 3M selling us sealant to patch these devices up every 5 to 10 years?
I have often wondered, having worked with thermocouples on water heaters and seeing the ability for dissimilar metals through being hit by a flame to generate millivolts of electricity, I often wonder, why can't we just scale this up? That
there's a whole family of materials that do that. So yeah, you're right on the money with that. And that's why I'm trying to get in here with you're like, oh yeah, when are you going to build something? But this is why I run so many simulations, right? Because as I keep engineering it down, instead of having to build 4 different Boston Dynamics robot generations, we just do it in sim, and I learn all these little principles as we go along, and I learn about the materials families, and then I can pass that on to somebody like you, and your line of thinking about, well, could we do something with this, kind of gets confirmed, right?
Oh, understood. I kind of smell what you're cooking, but then I'm just, I'm not trying to be a dick, but there's a disconnect because I'm expressing to you that when you say stuff, it doesn't actually trigger anything in my head to build anything. I'm just letting you know that currently it comes across as mumbo jumbo. Again, I'm not trying to be a dick about it. It's just, I guess, almost similar to when God Sauce talks about his AI stuff. It's it just sounds like someone's coming up with their own vocabulary. So the challenge is laid at your feet. I hope you win the martini. That's all.
Well, now at the very least, I have a design that I can get you to build so we can share the martini and meet in the middle. You know what I mean? Literally hire you. Not literally, but you
well,
get
fair
the
enough.
joke,
I mean,
right?
but then it just, no, I get it. But then, in my mind's eye, it still requires you to put something in front of me that's a functional blueprint that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and I don't mind a good challenge if you actually make the challenge in good faith, as it seems like you are as we're talking about it more, because, then I call a friend and, we have him look over the Super Forge designs for metamaterials, and now we're down to $300 to $500 of basic crucible and casting equipment to see if we can make some 0 point energy brass.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm game for this type of stuff, but again, because I'm a tradesman, because I have the ability to wield the tools and look at the blueprints, there's many times I also look at a set of plans that are handed me by an engineer, and I laugh at them and go, that won't work. And I don't really have a way to express it other than I apologize, but what you're putting in front of me isn't feasible, and I just know that from being a tool wielder.
Yeah, that's why we go through generations, so we finally get to where we are now, something practical.
And I respect the effort.
Testable.
I totally respect the effort that you're putting forth. I'm just being respectable and saying that currently there's a disconnect between what you're trying to put to my brain and what my brain is receiving. That's all. But we got upgrade here. Exactly. We got upgrade here with his hand up as well. So fire away, sir.
Man, you're not alone. I try to understand what Prompt is saying most days, and I'm struggling. I think I'm pretty smart, but then I listen to him talk, and I'm like, dude, we're like what Nathaniel was saying earlier about all of this being magic. We're basically figuring out how to become Jedi again, right? We got to rebuild the Masazi Temple and all that. But anyway, what I wanted to respond to was what Daz was talking about the Merkaba and the Metatron's cube, right? So Merkaba means light, spirit, body, right? It is the convergence of light and spirit, which are effectively the same thing. It's that those two opposing spiral waves, the simplest form is that Merkaba, those two tetrahedrons opposing, right? But you stack 8 of them together, and you get the isotropic vector matrix. It stacks infinitely. That's the basic space-time geometry. And then the way that it oscillates and moves is what creates all these different octaves. And then the Metatron's cube, if you look in the the purple pill, you'll see this diagram that almost looks like a chalkboard diagram or something, and it says galaxy dynamics. And you'll see how that Metatron's cubic form is what's like creating the Milky Way galaxy and the star, and how all that works. And, like I fail to describe a lot of this stuff, but I like to post the visuals because it helps a lot of people. It's almost too much to put into words.
I totally get that. I think that's why there's value to the old statement, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. For sure. So it's definitely helpful to illustrate these things versus just struggling to find, you know, a new vocabulary that functions for everybody. It is a lot easier. You know, I mean, that's the value of blueprints for construction. You know, it's better than just a conversation if I want you to build a house. You know, when you can put pictures and say, this is the house I want you to build, that matters.
Yeah, that's why it's exciting. There's one guy on Twitter, at least, who's playing with visualizers for the exotic physics, and he's trying to figure out some of the Borromean ring geometry stuff that Nathaniel was talking about there, and how to apply visualizers for it. And I'd seen recently that he got it to the point where he can kind of explain and develop like an actual atom and its valence levels and orbits and stuff and where it's coming from. I'm really excited for that because we all need more Bill Nye the Science Guy Discovery Channel visualizers to really understand all this. It's like if I could show Eric a sphere picture of what all those geometries for the pipe are supposed to look like for the hot cold water difference, I bet you it'd make sense to him instantly visually as a plumber.
Well, I can tell you that Gene showed me some stuff from his father-in-law, and the images did well for my brain to realize that it was, you know, more of a mechanical piping system. So, yes, the images do well for me, especially when they're plumbing diagrams.
Who's Gene, by the way? That's a new name.
Gene Sticko is a gentleman that you'll see in my coffee talks in the morning pretty regularly, and he came across some information through his father-in-law, was some sort of a German plumber slash scientist that was apparently very involved with some sort of anti-gravity propulsion system slash free energy situation. You know, leading edge technological advancement that's misunderstood by most, but apparently his father-in-law had been working in that regard on the Soviet side for quite a long time, and now Gene is trying to get that information out as best he can in an environment that is detrimental to sharing the truth.
Interesting. Trippy. I wonder if it's a bit of a stretch. This is just fantasy talk for a second, but I wonder if anyone in my family knows anything, because turns out my family is actually the BMW family, and I've asked the question as to why the branch that got to keep the company didn't lose their money during the Nuremberg trials, and I'm wondering if it's because they were producing some of the wonder weapons for the Luftwaffe, so they wanted them to stay in active manufacture and work with them over and across the seas in America with the scientists they were bringing over. It's very strange that BMW didn't lose its money in the Nuremberg trials.
I believe the Nuremberg trials were a con job to absolve people of their sins versus convict them and then to provide a process to absolve them and then bring them over.
Yeah, exactly, right. But some people did get punished for, you know, the show trial side of it, right? So
exactly.
Even then, what I was kind of saying to some degree does fit with what you were saying, right? Well, if it's mostly a show trial, then why did my family get passed over on the, like, you know, being used as a show and, you know, instead left to just continue to function? Because maybe there's certain things they did want them to keep doing. And not my branch, but just the family in general. It's interesting.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of the peculiar engagements of my past, when I was a young child, I actually was in proximity with great regularity to a former SS officer who made it through the Nuremberg trials and was found not guilty.
Trippy.
but I would like to just take a second, since I'm an irresponsible host often, and there's a bunch of people in here, and I would just ask, if you're not currently following me or Nathan, who was up here speaking before, please do. Myself and Nathan are folks that are trying to do due diligence to get the truth out to the masses. There's stuff that people don't know about, and they need to know about it. So both of us are on the front lines of the fight. I did bring Nathan over to the website to try to support what he's doing. I appreciate that he's been on YouTube and fighting the good fight, and he's not getting traction over there. So I created deciphering.tv, my website, because I understood that freedom of speech is no longer free. And as much as I try to use these platforms to get information out, I also believe that we, the people, many hands makes light work, that we can accomplish stuff on our own. We don't necessarily just have to be endeared to these platforms. So I have started my own. The website's deciphering.tv, and by all means, take a look. There is information over there, and we are growing. So like I said, I brought on board Nathan, who's going to be engaging more. I have two other folks, Gabriel Speaks, who you might see on here. He's also a fantastic content creator and a great researcher. And then I also brought on James Oliva of the TLB, the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. So these are folks that I've engaged with, been working with. They support what I'm doing. I support what they're doing. And we're just simply trying to network to figure out a way to get truth to the masses in a way that's just simply not censored, not throttled, doesn't have an AI algorithm working against anybody. So yeah, check it out. Give us a like. Many hands makes light work, and a rising tide raises all ships, folks. We can accomplish stuff that they don't think that we can. And with that being said, too, if anybody else wants to jump up and request a mic for speaker, anybody that's been in here in Cawffee Talks before knows that I pretty much let anybody take a shot, engage the conversation, as well as, it's an open door policy. It goes two ways. Don't be a knucklehead. Be pertinent, be kind, be polite, be on topic, and yeah, by all means, don't hesitate to grab a mic. This has been wonderful information shared by Nathan this morning, and good engagement from Prometheus and Upgrade. I think it's fantastic that we do these mental jam sessions where, we all try to, lift up the intelligence of each other. It's a beautiful thing. Additionally, there's been quite a few really nice posts that were shared in the Purple Pill. I recommend everybody take a look at that. Upgrade gave some really nice visuals, and like we were saying before, I think the visuals are fantastic. I think there is something to be said for looking at things when you're talking about such topics that absolutely assists in getting your brain into that concept. So take a look at that stuff that Upgrade posted in the Purple Pill, and see if that helps, trigger some thoughts in your head, spark some fires.
And if for some reason you're very math-minded, like me and Nathaniel, or technically logic-minded towards physics like me, because I don't do my own math, my thing there in the Purple Pill is a share conversation with Grok that is already targeting all the math I've publicly posted. So if anyone's got any weird up and keep talking with Grok, because it'll keep pulling from all the math and actually explaining it at a super deep level with geometry as to what's going on with space-time.
Well, I always joke around and say that I do all math under protest with a calculator.
I feel you on that one. I can technically do my own math, but I don't have any remembered like multiplication tables or anything. So it's a very slow, brutal process where I have to make like an individual algorithm by hand to like figure anything out.
For me, it's kind of an on-site trade joke doing service plumbing for so long. I've just utilizing my hands and my tools in the environment. So it really boils down to like cutting and measuring pipe. I've gotten to a point where I don't even need to really use a ruler. I can just kind of show up with short pieces, eyeball stuff enough to the point that I've just kind of, my skill set is increased to the point where I don't need to use math. I can use my eyes, my hands, and the tools, and everything else is, I guess you would call it, close enough technique to where things just simply work.
Yeah, I hang out with the guys who do the service on my house when they're around, just in case they even need a tool run out of them from their own stuff in the other part of the house. And yeah, the good ones, they can walk up to the truck from just looking at the pipe in the basement and know, like from a rough offcut, which pile ones out of the pile will fit, and take 2 or 3 and take them down and check which one will have the least like waste and cut it off, instead of having to take a whole pipe down there and measure and do all this stuff to cut one little piece.
Exactly. And then once you get down there and you hold the short piece in place, you can just kind of eyeball it. You know, this end's going to go here, this end's going to go there. You put your thumb on the pipe, you score it with the cutter, and that's the piece you need. No tape measure required. No math.
Yeah, it is something else to watch people who've done their trade for a long time actually work it if you have the time to stay home and study it.
I'm not sure if anybody's looking to jump into the space apparently today to engage. I consider myself a terrible monologuer. And Nathan was kind of the topic of the morning. So I'm wondering if maybe just discretion being the better part of valor, and my stomach getting hungry as usual around this time of day, maybe we'll just wrap it up, call it a wonderful conversation, and everybody enjoy. Thank you so much for engaging Prompt and Upgrade. Thanks for everybody for joining in here today and listening to Nate share his information. I'm really looking forward to Bob and Nate mental jamming on this stuff. I think it's fantastic, and hopefully it'll be to the benefit of all of us sooner than later. So fingers crossed. Some new physics would be fantastic, and everybody have an excellent day. I'll catch you on the flip side. Be well, and help people out around you today. Let's do that. Enjoy, everyone.